You know how to sing. You've taken lots of lessons yourself, but how do you translate what you know as a student to actually teach others? And by the way, I know I'm talking directly to singers and singing teachers, but the tips that I'm going to share with you are absolutely applicable to many other art forms if you're an acting coach, if you're a dance teacher, and all the rest, okay? Now, this video is particularly for beginning teachers. Either you haven't started teaching or you've just started teaching. And your first students are seeming to be lots of children, that you're a beginning teacher teaching beginning singers, or whatever your art form is, right? Now, there are absolutely some best practices and tips that are gonna help you get started being a new teacher teaching new singers. Hi, I'm Fiona, and it is my passion and my purpose and my privilege to help performing artists to master social media and online business so you can make more money without burning out or wasting time. Okay, let's dive in. Here's the thing. Not only have I taught singing, public speaking, acting, improv, holistic breathwork, macrobiotic cooking, and probably audition practices, probably more. I've taught a lot of different things. Not only have I taught, and I taught singing consistently throughout all that time for over 20 years. Not only have I done all of that teaching, but I've also been a singing student of one-to-one lessons for over 30 years. And it wasn't just singing lessons that I took. I also took cooking lessons and acting lessons and improv classes and piano lessons. And I worked one-to-one with opera coaches, and I worked one-to-one with diction coaches for my opera career. And I have got so much experience as both a teacher and a student. So I'm uniquely positioned to help you as a new teacher teaching new students. Here's the thing. The 5 tips I'm going to teach you today are crucial to you as a new teacher, but they're also critical to the results of your students, right? Have you ever worked with a teacher who was actually destructive, who actually tore you down or made you stop wanting to study that particular instrument, or maybe it was a sport? But we've all had a teacher who was really pretty awful. And I'm not saying at all that you're awful. I'm just saying that there are traps that we can fall in that can be devastating for the student. So I don't take this lightly, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't start. Absolutely, as a new teacher, you got to start and just be aware of some of these things and how they may impact your students as well. All right, so it's not just about you. There are 2 people in that one-to-one teacher-student relationship. And especially when we're talking about children, right? Surprise, I actually don't like teaching children. I never liked teaching children. However, I was a child at the beginning of my singing career, and I have taught children, and so I know what I'm talking about. But this may be you also not really wanting to teach children, and maybe you're going to teach beginning singers who aren't children, and that is a great choice as well. You also may think that you like teaching children and then discover actually you don't, and that's fine. You get to choose your dream students. Now, let's dive in with tip number 1. With children, your primary focus should be on creating a desire for more. We want the lessons to be fun. Especially with singing, a young child's instrument hasn't fully developed, right? Because the voice is the instrument. But I think personally, far too many of the other instruments are a little too heavy-handed and critical and insistent in these early stages. Now, I get it. If we want to be a prodigy, if we're going to have a concert career on a lot of the instruments and you start really young and you've got to be really dedicated, I get it. But if this is for a child's overall well-being and to create a love of music or a love of acting or whatever it is you teach, then we've got to focus on making it fun for the child, all right? We want to instill in these students a desire to continue with the lessons, right? Now, of course, this is great for you because it means that the income will be sustainable, but that's not really the primary reason. The primary reason is because we want to instill in them a love of music, a deep appreciation of the art form. We want them to have a long and good and positive relationship with music or with dance or what it is that you teach. Are you with me on this? So yes, it's good for you in terms of retention and income, but it's critical for the student. So let's focus on being uplifting and positive with our students, especially these young children. Number two, no matter what it is that they're learning, a young child's body has not fully developed. So their finger span is smaller if they're learning piano, their lung capacity is smaller if they're learning to sing, but also their brains are still developing. So they don't have the maturity that an older student would, right? And we have to keep all of this in mind when we are creating the tone for the lessons. Again, I want to encourage you to be more uplifting and more positive and encouraging with these students rather than critical or overly exacting. Keep in mind that they are literally still developing physically and mentally. Now let's get into this issue of practice, right? Because this is where people run into so much challenge. As a new teacher, your ego is somewhat connected to how well those students are doing, right? And how the parents are responding to you as a teacher as well. You've got to stop that and get your ego out of the equation, because this focus on practice, on the one hand, is the easiest place to start, right? But it's also the easiest place to do lifelong damage to your student. So yes, of course, practicing is important, but don't make their success or failure be dependent upon how much they're practicing. In fact, let's not have them be failing at all, right? Let's just be celebrating them. Of course, if you're watching my YouTube video, then you know that this is my perspective. You know that this is one of my core values for all of my own clients as well. Everything on my channel is about uplifting people, not tearing them down. Do not underestimate the power of your influence on this young child, okay? Even in one lesson, and that's all they had, they could have such a negative experience that they forever are scarred, okay? And I'm not saying this to make you not start teaching. I want you to start teaching. I just want you to understand the power of your influence. The fact is that if a student starts with you young and stays with you for years, it's highly likely that they're going to internalize your voice the same way that they internalize their parents' voices, meaning that later on in their life, they're going to remember the things that you said. And sometimes they're even going to think that this is something they believe organically when it came originally from you. Now, this can be a wonderful thing if you are instilling confidence in them, if you are helping them to feel joyful and happy in music and in art, then this is an amazing thing. But if you have any shadow work to do, if what I mean is you're projecting and you've got ego attachment to your students' success, then this is something that you need to work on outside of lessons. Do your personal development work. Watch all of the mindset videos on this channel. Clear out anything that might be getting in the way of you being an open channel to your students, being an open, uplifting, motivating, positive role model for these young, impressionable students. All right. Now, the next tip is actually to be very clear about your standards. It's possible that even as a beginning teacher, it's not appropriate for you to teach beginning singers or students who aren't serious and whose parents aren't serious. So if you're very driven and focused and you want people, even at the earliest stages, who are also focused and very committed, then that's okay, and stick with those and don't take the ones that are just doing it recreationally. You actually get to choose your dream students. This is going to save everyone drama and trauma, right? Be clear. Do you want to teach recreational students or do you want to teach serious, potentially pro-track students? And also, what kind of parents do you want? Do you want parents who are helicopter parents? Do you want parents who sit in on the lessons and are paying attention and make sure their kids practice? Do you want more laid back parents who aren't really that present during lessons and just kind of drop their kid off and leave? What do you want? And there's nothing wrong with any of these different kinds of parenting styles. It's about matching up the parenting style with you and your teaching style, right? This will also save a bunch of headaches. So it's just being aware of this stuff from the very beginning. It's so easy as a new teacher to just take all the students and think that you've got to continue with all of the students. Now, it's probably true that as a new teacher, you are going to take all of the students, but you don't have to keep all of the students. students. And very quickly, you're going to start seeing red flags. Not that there's anything wrong with this student or the parents, but that they're not a good fit for you. And in that case, I highly encourage you to refer them to someone else. This can be amazing. Let's say if you're a very strict teacher and a very focused on the ProTrack teacher, then having a colleague who's really laid back and recreational means that you could pass students for them, but they could also pass those students who are just driven and focused over to you. How cool is that, right? Okay, so on top of being clear about your standards, you also need to be clear about your boundaries. Your boundaries with the students, but also your boundaries with the parents. Because maybe it's not okay with you if they're late on their payments. Maybe it's not okay with you if they're late to lessons. Maybe it is. Maybe you have more flexibility around what time they show up and how long the lessons are. You've got to be clear with the parents and with yourself around boundaries. And I recommend from the very beginning, even if you're a totally new teacher, to actually have a studio contract that the parents and the young students sign so that everybody is on the same page about your rules. For example, what's the cancellation policy? Can they cancel day of, or only 24 hours, or 48, or only when there's illness? Be very, very clear from the beginning. This is going to help everybody to be successful. All right, I know I gave you a lot of tips here that were warnings and maybe a little bit like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to be so careful. Even so, my last tip is to just start. Just go ahead and start. The next time somebody says, do you teach? Just say yes and do it, okay? The other 4 tips, these are things that I want you to be aware of, things that you need to be thinking about, but they should not get in the way of you just starting because you are gonna learn by doing. This is one of the best ways to learn. I'm assuming that you've taken lots of lessons already if you're in a position where you're ready to start teaching. So think about who were your favorite teachers and why. What did they do amazing? Who were the teachers that left a bad taste in your mouth and why? What was the problem? I've actually got a lot of videos on this channel all about teaching and raising your rates and getting more students and all of that. So check out the playlist when you're done watching this one. And also, let me invite you to my free Facebook community. I made it specifically for the multi-passionate entrepreneurial performing artist, singers, actors, dancers, musicians who are ready to just look outside the box and become profitable. Every Friday, I do a live free training in that group where we can be interactive. And it's just a great place, a high vibe community. The link is in the description. Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, follow me on Instagram, and all the rest. Okay, so you're ready to get started. You're ready to teach your first students, but how do you structure a lesson? Do you know? Watch this video next to learn how. And as always, go out into the world and let your light shine. You deserve to be heard, and the world deserves to hear you.